It's rather difficult to initiate a dialogue on the back of a video like that. But I would just like to say one word of caution, which is a dialogue is not just an exchange of ideas, but in a dialogue we try to take some question or some observation that we've had based on what we've seen, and we try to explore it further for ourselves. So it's not an exchange of ideas or opinions, or it's not a debate, it's not a discussion really, but it's an attempt to take something and move further with it so that we move in our own understanding and not in the expression or repetition or interpretation of something that we've heard. I'd just like to say that from the outset, because it is not everybody's used to it, so it's a kind of you have to kind of feel your way into it somewhat tentatively. So, the floor is open.
Are you waiting for one of us or something?
No, the floor is open.
Oh, the floor is open.
I don't have a question of my own to raise. So, do you want to join the circle, sir?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What is your name?
My name is Richard Carpenter.
Do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'll make an observation from after having listened to Krishnamurti that probably for the space, in the sense he was talking about, to exist, time has to end, probably. Psychological time.
Right. Yes.
That's, I mean, just as a food for thought.
Yes.
We'll spread the circle a little bit.
Yeah, spread the circle. I wonder what you mean by psychological time. Perhaps we could go into that, because it's not obvious to everybody probably what it is.
Basically, in the sense of becoming, in the sense of is the difference between what is and what ought to be, in a sense, or what I am and what I want to be. There's a psychological time involved in trying to move from what you are to what you want to be. Mm-hmm. In that sense, that time has to cease, has to stop, in order for space to exist, because the space, in the sense that he's talking about, is the mind is in flux all the time, and that flux is a function of all of our experiences that we carry.
Why do we think it has to stop?
Otherwise, I mean, why does the flux have to stop?
Yes, you're saying that it has to stop, but is that your own discovery, or is it something you've heard Krishnamurti say, and now you're repeating it to the rest of us?
It's a tall question that you're asking me. I would say, certainly I've listened to him. There's no question about it. So there ought to be some influence there. But it's also an observation, I would say, that I don't like to use the word mind, but if I observe my own mind, I see that as a fact. So the mind is in flux as I'm talking, for example. If I observe my own mind, there may be certain sensations, there may be certain reactions, there may be some emotions that are going on. They are not going on at the moment, but they may well be going on.
No, but you've gone from that to saying it has to stop for this, space to exist. Is that something we see, or is it something that we've heard Krishnamurti say and therefore repeat it? Or is it something we feel that is a rational corollary, is a rational outcome of the mind being in constant movement? This is what we have to. We should examine this, because it's not so obvious actually. See, one of the difficulties with being with Krishnamurti, living with Krishnamurti, is his clarity invades one, or influences one, but that's different from actually discovering something for yourself and living it. So I think we should approach it kind of tentatively, hesitantly, without making too many assertions, and see what the content of what he calls psychological time is, because I think it's quite important. And most of us are not used to distinguishing between ordinary time by the watch, time by the clock, and what he calls psychological time, which is wanting to be something, or not wanting to be something, or trying to be something, and then failing to be something and being disappointed because you've not become the something that you wanted to become. All that's involved in it. It's a huge field, actually. Please, others, come on.
Based on my own observation, I think the psychological time, it starts from a gross level and it gets subtler,
Right.
to the sense that even if I'm not conscious that I want to become something or get psychologically to the point, but the whole machinery when they move,
Right.
I can feel that.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the conditioning from birth, the psychological time, the result of that?
So you mean it's a kind of flow, or it's a kind of movement?
That is the conditioning, and is the attention, the energy into attention of whatever the moment is, the ending of psychological time.
I could not hear much.
You couldn't hear it?
No, not. I was not able to attend the whole video. The last sentence he spoke, in silence time stops. And it is a fact. If you go to silence, there is no psychological time.
Yes, is it a fact for
It's
us?
a fact.
That's what we're questioning.
It's a fact. But do we go to silence? And if somebody goes to silence, for him, there is no psychological time.
Yeah, that's for him, that's what I'm saying. But for us, often there are actually different kinds of silence. There's the silence, of an evening. There's a silence when you go to sleep. There's a silence between two thoughts. There's a silence in the woods. There are many kinds of levels and layers of silence. We have to be very careful with this word silence. I don't think it's... again, we can easily, having heard him and received it, project that we see or are in that silence, but I think it's very questionable, actually. See, the whole point in that is to get at the reality of things, or the actuality of things, as we sit here. This is it. As we sit here and as we explore them, to actually perceive something that is so, that something that is actual for ourselves. It's quite arduous, actually. So Richard was saying that the flow of conditioning already, when a person is born, they're born into something. So they're not just pure and innocent as we used to think, perhaps. They're born into something, and that movement of conditioning is going on. So I pick it up, you pick it up, it gets built into us, and then we replicate it. And within that general movement of conditioning is the notion of psychological time, which is that you will get somewhere someday. People are always asking you when you're young, what are you going to do when you grow up? retire, and what are you going to do, you know, or simply what do you do? So we're always looking at this, you know, this process. We're looking at things in terms of that process.
Well, I think firstly, you have to see that we're actually doing that.
Right.
So, if in my conditioning I'm so identified as a person, and every one of us being that person has a personality and some flavor of conditioning, and each one of us has that, carries that somehow. And then what Krishnamurti is offering is sort of like, I almost want to call it like a medicine for that. That's the word that came out. Because it's an invitation to look at that. And so if we're always assuming and relating to each other as persons, and then he's describing what that is, all the content of our consciousness, may be different and maybe specific to one being, but in general we all have that. So I think firstly to really be in touch with that is a place to start, and then the invitation. And actually, he's not only giving us the invitation, but he's speaking from a place, it seems as though where he's actually seeing it dissolve.
Right.
So he's living from that place.
Right.
And so you're pointing at, we assume, oh, he says it, then it's going to happen. Okay. But our living life doesn't reflect that. Like, I walk around as a person with all my projections, and so if I'm really interested in it, it seems as it's up to each one of us to take that in and work with it somehow. And then here's a format where we do it out loud or with each other, but then there's also the invitation to do it alone too. So it's something that is living. It can occur at any time. There's no method, right?
There's no method, you
There's
say?
no real method. I mean, in the sense that it's not a prescription. I said medicine, but it's not really like, do this and then you will get that. He's inviting us to find it out so we can actually like live it.
Right.
But most of our life, we've had teachers and we seek out assistance because we weren't conditioned to think for ourselves.
Because that is the conditioning. Probably we are not thinking that we can do.
It's so strong, like it's such a weight, you know.
Yes.
I sat through so many years of college and beyond and taking it all in and writing it down, and I never really thought about what I was doing.
No.
And then I do it every day, like my personhood.
So you just replicate it, really.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, you replicate what, wrote out, that you're born into the stream of conditioning, and then you or I, we replicate it in a, slight modification, slight modification, genetic differences, linguistic differences, climatic, culinary differences, but replication, basically.
Yeah.
And then we call it creativity.
And within that, some creativity. Within that, some creativity of a limited kind. So it's a tall order. You want to say something else?
Well, it is, and I almost don't want to believe that, that it's a tall order. I feel as though, given the weight of that conditioning, I think it seems as though every human sentient being has had, at some level, part in their life, some experience of that, like, you could call it epiphany, aha moment, awakening, where everything just slows down, and you didn't really know how you got to it even. It's not really like you did something to get that, or you may be in nature, or you may be, it may come like superfluously somehow, And so I think, from what I believe, I believe Krishnamurti is living in that place. Like, that silence permeates his being. That's all he talked about his whole life. How could he sustain that if he wasn't actually alive in him, right? So, I don't have that experience of myself, but I have had moments, So there's an inherent belief on my part that what he's speaking of and pointing to is actual. But then I think, like I said, firstly, it's like, how do I approach that? Do I approach it as a person to try and figure out what
Right.
he means? You know, do I apply my mind? Or so that's like a living question. Here it's like, what is it that I'm bringing to that?
Right.
You know? I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, he did talk, didn't he? He did talk about observing. I can't. Sorry. There were two tapes. There was an audio tape.
Earlier.
He talks about observation without the observer. That was quite an interesting remark.
What differentiates observing without the observer and just being?
Regular observation.
And he alludes to this thing called the flame of attention.
Right.
And it's that energy and that attention that may be on an individual person-to-person basis is where the inquiry for that individual takes place.
Right.
When he means, I think, observation without the observer, which means the ending of thought, I would say, because the observer is thought. And therefore thought and therefore time. And what he said in the audio tape that we heard this morning, that when people say we have discovered God, which is just a projection of our thought,
Fear.
fear or thought, what it is. And of course, one thing I have heard from some people that in prayer we speak to God, and in meditation God speaks to us. But again, the question is that speaking of God speaking to us, does it come from projection of thought or from fear, or does it come from the silencing, the silent mind which he refers?
Yeah, it's the one question we can return to. Get.
I think he
Is it possible to observe the stream of to observe myself as part of the stream? I'll put that question. Whether the observer's there, you know, is it possible for me to look at myself not as Steve Smith over here, separate from everybody else, but is it possible for me to look at that person, my personhood, as belonging to a much larger field? It seems to me that is possible. I think we habitually or normally we start from the wrong end, right? We sort of start with me and my personhood, with my problems, and then I try to solve it within that. I try to solve it within that arena. But actually, the person and the problem belongs in a much bigger arena. More or less where that everybody's, you know, because human beings are doing more or less the same things and are caught in more or less the same traps everywhere.
I was thinking when you try to end thought, who's the person who's doing the ending of thought?
Right.
That is again, it is a thought which is putting its effort.
Right.
As you use the term controller and controlled. Somewhere you say that that comes as a thief. I mean, the thought will aid as like a thief comes and steals.
You know, I think the more sensible way is that rather than inquiring into how to end thought or, you know, what is that state that you might be in it, or what is it that you are trying to seek or reach. I think you have to start what we have, or, choicelessly observing of the facts. If there's anxiety in me, I just observe that. All what is just observation of what is, not moving from the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all seeking any form of answer, because any form of seeking is a psychological time. Any I think any inquiry into moving from what is just again thought wanting to capture a state, adding it to itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why he constantly said, just stay with the facts.
Mm-hmm.
And
And does that fact then have a movement of its own, or does it have a life of its own?
yeah.
See, I think one of the difficulties, we don't want the facts because many of them are unpleasant. So we don't want the facts, we'd rather have something that is beyond the fact. But the actual fact remains, a classic example that Krishnamurti uses is talking about non-violence, which is very common indeed. Non-violence, but still there's violence. So it doesn't do away with it.
Because non-violence is an idea for me.
It's an ideal.
Yeah, for me, violence, fear, anxiety, these are the facts. Even if we try not to name it at all, because the fact is there's some movement.
There's some movement.
If I name it violence, I'm already condemning it.
Of course. And in that movement also, and in that violence, there's a lot of energy locked.
Yeah.
But he also said that we can look at the reality of this is each thing has its root in its own opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So non-violence is rooted in violence.
Because they're illusions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Psychological time.
Yeah. So I think.
Sorry.
Can I? So I think by how I observing myself, by choicelessly observing these facts,
Mm-hmm.
there would be just pure observation,
Mm-hmm.
which again implies no. So it is no condemnation, no movement of work, no analysis, nothing. It's just what is, and then in that. These things would reveal themselves to you, somehow it goes back to the whole emptying of content of the consciousness, because then without even any point of conflict, they just wither away and they go away. So there is no conflict between a person, figuring out that it is not there. It's just not there anymore. Yeah. So staying with the facts, I think, is the key.
And the other thing you mentioned about the conflict, that seems to be central to it also, because see, it's obvious looking around the world how much conflict there is, say in the Arab world or between, and not just there, almost everywhere in fact, but there it's very obvious. And we also are conflicted often in our approach to, say meditation, because now I have to get on top of my wrong desires, or I have to get on top of my random impulses, or I have to, I feel. So I've already set up a conflict.
I think any movement from what is conflict. Because if I want to operate on it, if I want to change it, if I have an intention of finding out about it, I've already separated myself. There is conflict, there is division.
Yeah, not only that, but I'm also using time as the tool to get over it.
Yes.
I think that's when we come back to psychological time. This is what it is. I'm using time as a tool to get over it. So today I'm selfish, but tomorrow I'll be unselfish if I work at it. which is using time as the tool in which to get over it, rather seeing that, yes, this is how it is now, and living with that, as, you know, sort of living with it, being with it, staying with it, not eluding it or evading it or projecting it, but actually being it.
So it feels like a misapplication of the brain, like, I just saw something like, if the mind and the brain is a receiver, if we can trust that what we're taking in,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the freedom to look at that,
Right.
then there's no need to like create mental constructs from which to like sort of chew on and figure out.
Right.
It's sort of like the brain has the capacity also to receive and reflect and
Right.
and sort of like fine tuning that by again listening to someone give you the opportunity or the invitation or the saying you have the freedom to do this. You've been told all your life, or maybe not some of us, not as much as others, whatever, but there's a freedom to look, and in that looking there's a like a chemistry of its own. And we can't even explain it, and we're not meant to.
Mm-hmm.
And so to observe that operating within us, sort of like inculcates, like incubates that sense of yourself. You know, like there's like a inherent wisdom in it. You can't like not be touching wisdom somehow.
You can't not be who you are.
But you can't not be when you touch that operating, that reflective, that spaciousness, somehow it has like its own intelligence, right?
Right.
And so like we sort of just have to get out of the way, and use like the brain can be receiving that, rather than our typical, like again conditioning of using the brain as sort of like a thinker machine. Like
Right.
can we sort of reorient it to what it's also capable of, which are receiving, reflecting.
Right.
And then again, what are we receiving? So we have that question. Am I receiving more conditioning, more ideas, more thoughts, you know? But if you have freedom to look at that.
Or simply to listen.
To listen, yeah, to
Yeah.
what's going on in our heads, you know. So
Well, Krishnamurti often talks about a different use for the brain,
that's what
which is
capable
rather like,
of.
I think is rather like what you're saying. We're used to this kind of technological approach, a fix-it approach.
Yeah.
You know, we can fix it, and if it's psychological, we think we can fix it also, which is a big mistake. Rather than receiving it and being with it, letting the thing itself operate.
If we try and fix it, it's a closed loop system because the problem was created within the system itself, and so it's like it's never ending chasing its own tail.
It's more replication.
So then there's like an orientation from his words to step out of that and then to discover what it is that we experience and encounter by stepping out of that sort of mechanism somehow.
Right.
I think in what we just saw with Alan Anderson, that control, the controller, is what I think you're alluding to here. It's can you observe the controller that you are when you're making observations, and in that observation something, a new intelligence comes about which you can't describe.
In my observation, my growing up years in India, my parents followed Jainism, and one of the teachings of Jainism, as I understood it, was detachment. The mind operates differently when it's attached to anything, attached to people around you, attached to your liking, disliking. Mind functions differently, and throughout my growing up years, what I hear from learned people was to learn to be detached yourself. When you detach yourself, you see things in different light altogether. And mind functions differently when you learn to detach yourself and then observe. But it has to be an effortless activities and not forcing your mind to detach. With attachment, a lot of things comes that influences your mind, which doesn't let you free. But with the detachment, if you understand more and more to detach yourself from surroundings, from people, from your emotions, from your conflicts, that detachment brings that silence that you seek after for a relief of looking in an entirely different perspective, the same problem which was attached to things around. That is what I have observed, and I have seen changes in myself many times. When something really bothers me and I want to be peaceful and there's a conflict, I try to go back to practice of detaching myself actively from that situation or from that, if it is a person, individual, or if there is some cause in the world. The detachment does allow me to think differently and bring that peaceful time period, psychological time period.
Yeah, but attachment goes on, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, you may modify it or contain it or, you know, tame it somewhat, but attachment goes on, doesn't it? The whole movement of attachment
Yeah,
goes
to
on.
detachment.
Because now I have this attachment, you know, I'm attached to food or something, you know, and then I tell myself, no, I shouldn't do. So I can move it somewhat, or I can tame it, or make it less gross than it would otherwise be, but it still goes on. It doesn't end it. So I think what Krishnamurti is talking about is ending something, really ending it, and it doesn't seem to me that you can do that in and through time, because time is the very process that's perpetuating it. You know, time is perpetuating the attachment because I'll get a better meal tomorrow. Time is perpetuating it, so I'm using the same tool of detachment to deal with the thing which is already perpetuating itself. So I think there's a certain amount of friction there. Must be. To me, he's talking about something else, because you can't get to it through time. That's what we began talking about, psychological time. It's something that's been tried for millennia, and it still doesn't work, and it probably never did, except for a few.
But isn't this attachment,
Oh.
could use another word, spaciousness? Like from the way you described it, I heard there was sort of like a space to look. Because if I'm so attached, there's that narrowing movement in the way. Like, I want this thing, I want this food, I'm really attached, I need to eat at noon, I need to eat this amount of food, and I need to eat this kind of food. And you're sort of, and then you operate, the machine starts, and it's like, I want it, you know, it's like, it has like a will of its own. And then, so then the detachment, I heard it as spaciousness. Like somehow, there's like, you sort of like, maybe it's through observation, you pull back and you just go, do I really want this thing, or you know, and then there's somehow like space is there in it. I would think you could, I don't know, if detachment and space mean the same thing, I don't know, but it seems like.
But don't we want detachment too?
Yeah, it could be attachment to your detachment, because you're conditioned.
Right.
It seems that we see something and then right away we want something of the opposite, which is you see your attachment and pretty soon you want to be detached from it.
But
That
that would be the same attachment. It's the same mechanism, that will that he started. If I see an attachment, so I have the will, the intent to be non-attached. It's the same motion. You're always seeking security of feeling like I'm not attached. So I'm secure. Not there you're stuck again. Who's the attacher? Who's the secure?
No, I don't think I meant that. I don't think attachment is it's only how your mind thinks when you have attachment. Detachment, effortlessly detachment means to me, my observation is
Taking a step back.
detachment is shedding your skin. It's breathing new. It's less burdening yourself. That's a detachment. Is you are literally, you think yourself, shedding yourself and becoming new. And when that process happens unconsciously, I feel myself much less burdened. I feel myself very light and that emotion free for that particular. It can be fraction of minute, fraction of second, or timeless. It can be. But attachment is, creates a heaviness, and the detachment is more enlightening. Throughout Jainism, teaching is the importance of detachment as you grow in your life. It doesn't mean that you don't love people around you. It doesn't mean that you give up things that you like. But looking at things without being that very emotionally involved, and becoming observer of yourself. That this is what's happening, and understanding what's happening without attachment. And then you see your mind is much freer, much silence, much light-weighted. When you feel that experience, that is how I have understood and I have felt in life in certain stages, and the difference between attachment and detachment, and the learning process of detaching yourself or observing when the moment of detachment occurs in you without you yourself trying for it. Very difficult to explain, but I've experienced, and following that path, many times I have been able to meditate, or even sitting among 100 people, I could be alone, so to speak, myself, because there is a fraction moment of detachment to my surrounding, detachment to any of the thoughts. It's totally silence.
For me, I can relate to what you're saying. Sometimes I get in situations where I might be sad, I'm frustrated, but for me, it's a matter of, I like to be in a happy state most of the time. All the time I like to be in a happy state. But, of course, it doesn't always happen because of circumstances, and you get pulled into different situations. And for me, once I recognize that I have this tenseness or sadness, frustration, whatever you want to call it, I've learned to recognize it and go into a space of quietness and a smile, and I go into a zone, I guess you could say, meditation, whatever, maybe detaching myself, whatever the names you want to call it. But I know I go into my space of quietness, close my eyes, and just smile. And when I smile, for me, it opens something up. It helps me to let go of whatever's going on, and then whatever zone or meditation or what have you. And it doesn't take that long, maybe 5-10 minutes or what have you. When I come out of it, and then it's like, I feel refreshed, light, and it's not as burdensome. And the problem is still there, but I don't see it as being as heavy. It's not, it's like I could just go around it and not have to battle with it. So it's, I relate to what everybody's saying actually, but I love what you're saying because that's pretty much what I do on a regular basis.
I think the question for me is, maybe what I'm hearing and what has been the question for me has been always how you observe.
How you?
Observe.
How you observe. When you says you observe, so when you have that passion with your style, it seems to me, who is it that, you know, closes its eyes and tries to calm himself down as I used to always do, and then it does work for me, but then I open my eyes and 3 days later I have that again, and then I close my eyes and I take a deep breath and then I feel a bit better, but I think it all comes back, for me the question is, how do you live it and observe it? How do you, you know, that wisdom that you were saying, how, as you know, you have seen Krishna as a living thing, how do you observe choiceless? You know, that comes, that when you open your eyes, that, you know, that it just happens, and, you know, not that you calm yourself down. Who is it that calms, you know? Yeah.
I mean, you know how I see that is that, you know, this is a fact in life that there is sorrow, attachment, anxiety, and fear, and this and that. And me is confused, and then I have all these problems and issues, and me, Nasser, is confused, and now wants to, you know, get to the state of detachment, or have experiences of lightness, that one is detached, or have moments of, you know, better handling problems, or you know, asking the question how this I, you know, can observe. But I think the whole important question is that who is this I trying to, you know, be calmer, be detached, and how to get to the, you know, understanding how to observe. I think the fundamental question is that who am I? That tries all these things, again, moving from the what is, which is the momentary things going on, and trying to shape ideas, or you know, get into how to observe, or, you know, trying to find how to meditate, to be detached, and this and that. I think all these are, you know, movements from what is, and they're all, they, you know, they don't go to the root of the problem, which is, you know, who am I, separating myself and trying to find answers for all these issues, or trying to have those experiences. That who is I who recognizes that experience is detachment? You know, you know, who is I who recognizes that there is this clarity or silence? What is the texture or quality of that silence? How do you know that's the silence? Who is aware of this silence? So if I'm confused and I don't know anything, I know that I'm confused, then I think the point that starts is just observe the confusion, and not moving it from it, and it is what is. And
that's what detachment brings, is clarity.
but
Wait,
It's not
wait,
chaos, it's
wait a minute, we don't want to go, actually we have to end now, so is there anyone else who hasn't spoken who would like to say something? Because not everybody said. Is anyone else who would like to say something?
I'd like to say something about silence. That, the silence may not be the absence of everything, but it seems to me silence is what is behind everything, and it's where the awareness resides. Seems like to me, and then everything appears in that silence. So it's not necessary that all thoughts be gone, or all. It's just, it seems like to me, the background of that.
Thank you. I think that's a good note on which to end, actually, because we have to go to lunch now. So thank you, everybody. There's a session this afternoon I've written on what is Krishnamurti's meditation.